Fritz, thank you so much for helping my project.
Yeah, no problem.
Could you say a couple words about yourself?
My name is Fritz Walker. I'm a person. I'm terrible about talking about myself, so.
You like to make things?
Oh, yes, I love to make things.
You love a model and a movie night?
Yes, that is my creation, so to speak.
And I'm glad this is the first time coming, so I've been,
Oh,
for
right.
the past 8 months, I've been hoping it would happen again, that I could come.
Oh, yeah, sorry, my schedule has been pretty packed, so I hadn't done them as often as I used to do. So.
But no worries, I'm just so glad to be here today.
Well, thanks for coming by.
And did you know that NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the moon?
I know very much that they're doing that.
How did you find out about it?
I work on a program.
That is fantastic. Would it surprise you that about 80% of the people that I ask around here, like at Starbucks on the street, have no clue that we're going back to the moon?
I'm not surprised at all. NASA does a terrible job of advertising what they're doing.
Well, I mean, they produce so much content.
They do.
And they even made it in the news. They make it into like the State of the Union address.
It's there if you know where to find it, but it's not something that it's inundated by the news or people in their everyday lives see it all the time. You get specific news announcements, and maybe certain YouTubers and websites will talk about it a lot. But unless you're really focused on that, if you're an average person working your 9 to 5 day job, whatever, going around your business, you're probably not going to hear about it too much, unfortunately, until something happens, of course.
How much of it do you think is NASA not putting out enough news versus how we consume news has changed so much?
Well, both. Obviously, NASA does have what they call a public affairs office. So they do have an official group or division that's their job, is to put out news briefs. And they have Twitter accounts, and they have Facebooks, and they have that kind of stuff. Again, you have to really go look for it. They are a little bit hamstring, and they have to be careful how they do that. They can't technically advertise. I think it's because they're a government agency. I think they can't pay for advertisement. And so they have to use social media and whatever news reports that they can send out to let the people know. But of course, news is so easy to get, and there's so much of it. Social media, the news, it's just a lot. They're one little voice in the whole wilderness of voices. So sometimes it's hard to see them when you've got so many things: geopolitical, wars, what stars and actors are doing, what's the hot topic for the day on Twitter, and that kind of stuff. So it's just hard to break through all the noise to get to the people. That's all.
Yeah, it's not so much they're not producing enough, it's just everybody's producing so much.
Overproducing. It reminds me, years ago, there was a radio station I used to listen to when I worked out in California. And they would start with a whole bunch of voices and noise, everything overlapping. And you're like, what am I listening to? Then they would suddenly stop. It'd be real quiet. And they would say, in an over-communicated world, a whisper is a shout. And I always remember that, that's pretty profound, because we're on the day with so much stuff that you really can't tell sometimes what really to look for or really discern much of any particular thing, because we just, so much is dumped on us, like drinking from a water hose, so to speak, or fire hose.
Or 1,000 fire hoses.
1,000 fire hoses at the same time, blasting from all different directions. How do you pick out some little interesting thing over here when you're being blasted by the hot topic of the day over here, kind of thing? So
it's easier to detect exoplanets.
Yes, and it's amazing how many they've detected. I think it's several thousand, right, or something like that.
Yeah,
detected.
it's like, I mean, I think
astounding.
I think we may even be in the tens of thousands. At
It
this
could
point.
be. I wouldn't be surprised, and it's something you don't hear about. And you're like, wait a minute, they detected tens of thousands of planets that they think could possibly sustain life, and it doesn't get much play. We're too worried about what Beyonce is wearing. And this is something profound about the universe. It's like, are we alone in the universe? Is there possibility to be other things out there? And the more planets they find, the probability goes up that, maybe there is something out there.
Maybe we get her to wear a moon dress.
Give her ideas.
What do you think about us going back to the moon?
Oh, it's great. That's, the human nature is to explore, right? Why did guys and people climb mountains, go deep down in the ocean? It's it's because it's there, of course, is one part, but also it's part of human nature to explore. Ever since we've been around, right? We've been nomads. We've wandered around the prairies and to see what's over the next hill, to set up camp, and that kind of stuff. And so I think ultimately, one of people, Elon Musk, has said the same thing, is survival of the species, right? The moon is just a stepping stone to that. The moon is close, but it's still a very harsh environment. So you can learn to live there, and develop the natural resources there that'll help us go to the moon, to Mars, to other planets, maybe other star systems. You never know.
And talking about that, do you see a future where humans are on multiple planets?
I think it's inevitable. As long as we don't wipe ourselves out, I think at some point it's inevitable that we're going to go. And again, I think, we need to go. Again, all our eggs in one basket, as they say. We're all on this blue Earth, and if something happens there, that's it. So if we're on other planets, there's more likely that we will survive as a species. Maybe we'll learn more about the universe. Maybe we'll find things that we never expected to find.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm most excited about is the change in perspective. Whenever you
Right.
start having humans observing and experiencing space from multiple points,
Right.
what will be so obvious that's so hidden now? I
Yeah.
mean,
We don't know.
That's what I hope.
It's one of
to
those
find
known
out.
unknowns, right? We know there's something out there we don't know about, but until we go out there and find it, we're never gonna know about it. What's hidden below the surface of Mars? What's out in some of the moons of Saturn and Jupiter, or even closer in Venus, or Mercury, that kind of stuff. There's so much in the universe, kind of like Star Trek, right? They boldly go where no one's gone before and see what's out there, find out. There's a science fiction show I really like, speaking of Star Trek. It's not Star Trek, and there's one episode where the main character goes, we have these famous people, Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, Abraham Lincoln, that kind of stuff. And all of this, they all just fade away unless we go to the stars and spread our legacy.
That's kind of an interesting perspective. Maybe a lot of people would get excited about that who may not get excited about geology or science.
Right, yeah. Some of the abstract stuff is hard to get people, you're going to get, the average person's not going to really care all too much. You might find it kind of interesting, but geoscience is not high on the list of what things people care about. But if you think of it as a grand scheme of things, make it interesting, set up colonies, that kind of stuff, and then people will start saying, hey, wait a minute, there's more to life than just living on this planet.
Whenever your most optimistic self, how soon do you think we could have people living on another planet?
Oh, I have no idea. I'd hate to. I hope before the next century, probably.
Okay.
It's probably likely. So that's what, roughly 75 years for us to do something.
So by 2100, you're saying?
By 2100, I think we would have some sort of permanent outpost somewhere. Whether it's the moon or Mars, whatever.
I can live with that. It's been 50 years since we went to the moon.
Right.
75 years. Let's do something.
If you really want to cry in your beer, you look up some of the plans they had in the early 70s that NASA had. They had huge plans. They were by 1980s or 90s, they were talking about moon bases and Mars bases and all kinds of stuff. And it all just they ran out of money. Things got canceled. They gave you a little consolation prize with the space shuttle, but they had huge plans for this stuff, and and Vietnam War didn't help either. So we were already behind schedule.
And then after the space shuttle and the space station, we had the constellation prize of Constellation, which didn't quite happen.
Constellation got canceled. I worked on that program too.
Okay.
That was a big. There's still remnants of the Constellation. That's what the Orion is part of that, and the SLS has some of its genetic background in the Constellation program. So some of that's stayed a little bit, but now of course we have Artemis program, which is the big step, and that is now they are thinking ahead and establishing the infrastructure for our space infrastructure is what Artemis is for. So I think maybe more robust in that it's an international thing now. Before, Constellation was just the United States. Artemis is the Europeans, the Japanese, the Middle Easterners, the Canadians. It's an international endeavor, and so a lot of different countries and space agencies are coming together to build the space infrastructure to go back to the moon and to Mars. In fact, they call it Moon to Mars right now. They just don't call it the Moon program anymore.
Yeah, December 25th, 1968, we had Apollo 8 go around the moon.
Yeah.
And I was looking up videos on YouTube about it, and I found one with Jim Bridenstine talking about how, we're going with international partners, including Russia. And I was like, wow, that's so long ago. It's like, but it wasn't really. It was before Ukraine and the whole
It's funny how, geopolitics, it's really sad that, one of our greatest partners in the space program, Russia, is involved in that. And so it's sort of a political hot potato at the moment. hopefully in the future things can settle down and they become our friends again, and because they do bring a lot to the table. They have a lot of experience in the space program. They're still involved with the ISS and stuff, and I've worked with them in the past. And of course you got to separate. There's the Russian government, and then there's the Russian people and the scientists. When we deal with the Russian space program and the scientists, they're just like us. They're nerds and geeks, and they want the same thing as us. They don't really care about the geopolitical stuff. They just want to build rockets and go somewhere. But of course, a lot of times the government gets in the way of all this stuff and kind of mucks things up.
If you could take a trip to space, would you?
I think I would. Yes. As a kid, I thought it'd be neat to go into space, and as a fan of science fiction and stuff, I think if I had a pretty good chance that whatever I'm traveling in wouldn't blow up, then yes, I would love to go into space. Maybe walk on another planet.
Do you think you'll get a chance to go to space in your lifetime?
I don't know. That's a good question. Possibly. I think, because we can already go now. Right now, it's the cost. Unless you're really, really independently wealthy, then it's tough to go. But if the prices can come down to where it's somewhat affordable, then yeah, I could see doing that. Yeah.
Well, Fritz, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, nice talking to you too.
And
great questions.
Now we'll get started with Model and Movie Night at Crater Space.
We're going to watch a movie. We're going to watch a science fiction
good
show. So
which one?
It's an old film called Battle Beyond the Stars.
Okay.
It goes way back and has some relatively famous people at the time. It's a classic film. One of James Cameron's earliest films that he worked on. It wasn't as director, but it's kind of where he got his start. And the main guy, I forgot his name, is real known for making low-budget sci-fi and horror movies. But this one is actually better than it should be.
Well, that's awesome. Well, we'll get that on. Thank you again so much.
You're welcome.